And rolling.
Okay. So, you were just saying that there were 4 people,
Right.
4 teachers who really influenced you. Who was the 4th?
Okay, the 4th one is a teacher who's not well known here, but very well known in New York. And he's probably been teaching for 40 years. His name is Michael Howard. He was one of the original founders of the Actors, well, not one of the founders, one of the original members of the Actors Studio. So Stella called her technique of acting the system. Strasberg called his method. It was never meant to be the method or the system. But what ended up happening was, because of the way that Strasberg taught acting and because of the actors who became so good at the time, the method, because it was very different to anything anybody else had done before, became very famous. And even though and one of the things that's not very well known actually is that Strasberg and the Actors Studio did not take any actors that were not already well known and successful. Everybody at that time that they took had to go through extensive auditions, and if they weren't one of the top actors in New York, they weren't accepted by the Actors Studio. The only brand new actor that the Actors Studio and Strasberg ever accepted was James Dean, who ran out of classes and hated Strasberg and would not come back, and gave Strasberg no credit, because the very first time James Dean did an exercise in class, Strasberg crucified him. And he was the only actor who was not a fully trained working professional actor that he took on, whereas Stella trained actors, Brando, and thousands of others from the ground up who'd never had a lesson, and turned them into great actors, Robert De Niro included, and oh my God, so many people, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Cooper, so many, anyway, yeah.
Okay, cool. So do you want to...
Oh, Michael Howard, sorry. So Michael Howard was method, very, very different to Larry Moss and to Stella Adler. But at that particular time, I hadn't been studying for a year or two, and one of the things I believe, and it's what a lot of new actors, young actors don't realize, is you're really only as good as what you're doing at the moment. It doesn't matter how great you were a month ago or a year ago, or how sharp you were. If you're not working on your craft on a daily basis, you get dull, you get rusty. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. There's no static. And as an actor, if you're not working on your craft every day, you go backwards. And for me, one of the best ways to do that has always been being in a class if I'm not doing a show. Michael Howe, I was looking for a teacher, and it so happened at that same time I saw a bunch of shows in New York, and the actors whose work I liked the most had in their bios that they were studying with Michael Howard. And I went, oh, okay, well, that's it, I'm going to study with Michael Howard. And he said, the assistant said he had a waiting list of 6 months, and I thought, no, I don't wait 6 months for anybody. So I perfumed, heavily perfumed, an introductory letter on lavender paper and flowers and sent them. Actually, don't think I sent them, I think I actually showed up at his office and handed them, not knowing what he looked like, to him, and said, Michael's assistant said that he's got a waiting list of 6 months, but I need to start studying in the next 2 weeks. So please give him this from me and tell him that I want to meet him right away. And I did. Wish I'd done that with every area of my career. I wish I'd been that ballsy. And what he worked with, I actually learned several of the exercises that I teach, very specifically from him. Picture exercise I learned from him, very specifically, and child exercise and baby exercise I learned from him. And some of the best actors I've actually ever worked with were in his class. And one of the things I was told was only study with him for a year, because after a year he starts becoming Svengali. So you want to work with him for a year solidly, take it, go on, work with it. And I studied with him for about 18 months, and we had a horrible fight. 18 months to 2 years, we had a horrible fight at the end. Because he was doing a Svengali, and nobody should do that. But he was brilliant, he really did. He was one of my influences, and I'm deeply grateful to him.
Cool, okay, so what sets you apart from other acting teachers or other acting traditions?
Gosh, me. Me, wow. Well, I'm going to quote Stella. Stella said that we're all the sum total, whether we're acting teachers or whatever we are. We're the sum total of everybody that we've studied with, everyone that we've worked with, of our family genealogy, every book that we've read, every role that we've played. So if we have studied with great teachers, if we've read great novels and worked on great roles, if we've listened to music and lived in nature and created worlds of our own and really set out in the world to be the fullest human being that we could possibly be, then we're filled with that. And we're filled with everything that that teacher was filled with. Well, I've been fortunate. I've studied with several of the greatest teachers of the last 100 years. And they studied with the greatest teachers. And they studied the greatest writing and the greatest music. And I have too, not studied, but bathed myself, drowned myself, saturated myself in all of that, in literature, in music, in art, in sculpture, in living in Europe, and other sensibilities, and learning to speak other languages. So what sets me apart is I am influenced, I am affected, I have all of these layers from those influences, and I embody them and I respect them, and I very generously pass them on. I'm committed to the journey of being the best teacher I can to help the actor bring out everything that they've got and be the best actor that they can be. I am passionate about acting and I love it and I love life. I love the creative imagination. I'm deeply compassionate. I'm also deeply hands-on. I fight for the actor as well as sometimes with the actor. And I have a wealth of knowledge. And I also am an intuitive. My instincts are diamond. And I would trust them over most people's in the world when it comes to acting. And when I trust my instincts, I'm never wrong. So, and because I continue to strive to be the best teacher I can be and the best director I can be. So, and also I'm Australian, and for the most part I've been in Australian teaching in America, and now a half American back teaching in Australia, who's lived in Italy and lived in France and speaks, both languages, not well anymore, and is shaped by all of that.
Great. That music has started up again, but we're just going to have to
I heard
power
something,
through.
I wasn't sure what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to have to power through.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. And also, I've been a working actor, I've been a working director, and I don't know if you're still rolling.
Yep.
But a lot of acting teachers were never actors or directors. And the fact that one has been through the process of becoming an actor, the best actor they could be, and then taken that and used that to shape projects as a director, as well as a teacher, and I've also been a producer, and I've also worked in casting, and I've also written and developed projects. Very few teachers have all of those. Stella did, the great ones did, Uta Hagen did, Strasberg did, Sandy Meisner did, Bobby Ball did, all of the great teachers had that way back. Very few now.
So I'm just going to backdate that question. It was, does it help that you've worked as an actor and a director?
Okay, cool.
So you've got 2 studios, don't you? Where do you teach?
In New York and in Sydney, but I've also been hired to teach in Melbourne recently, and in the past I've taught in LA. I wasn't very happy teaching in LA because I didn't like the sensibility. I've loved working with Australian actors. There's a beautiful imagination and rich sense. Australian actors start out lazy most of the time, lazy-minded, not really willing to do in-depth work. Life is easy here, the weather is pretty good, things are pretty easy. This country has never had a full-on war or a famine or a full-on, in the last 50 years anyway. Anything that was a humongous tragedy that was a national thing. So unfortunately, tragedy and pain develop character. Adversity develops character. So the Australian sensibility of the last 50 years has not particularly developed a lot of character, which is a pity, because the sensibility in the soul and in the imagination is just so rich. So when Australians decide they want to be good at something, and they want to do it, and they want to learn it, and they really care, I think they go a hell of a lot deeper than most Americans, and are a lot more interesting, because there's still some kind of connection to the earth, connection to something that is almost prehistoric, for me, in that I see there's an earthiness and an unpredictability in Australians. Most American actors today are not unpredictable at all. They're completely formulaic because of everything to do with the internet and television and video games, and they don't read. You don't develop an imagination if you don't read. If you don't listen to different kinds of music, you don't develop an imagination or a sensibility that gives you a rhythm. Australians still read a lot, which is wonderful, and should read. You know, all of us need to read more, because then instead of the images are there telling us what to think or see or do, when we read, our imagination creates. So I love working with Australian actors. I love that Australian actors are taking over Hollywood. The good ones, anyway, the other ones no. I've loved working in New York, and if 9/11 hadn't happened, I probably never would have left New York, which might have been a sad thing, because then I wouldn't have gotten to work with you and with a whole lot of people, who, some of whom are very successful now in America. But I really loved New York for a long, long time, and I've been phasing out my studio in New York, actually, because it's impossible to be in both places equally. So most of what I've been doing in the last couple of years in New York is intensives and coaching rather than full hands-on classes. In Australia, I have been doing that, and now I'm looking to be directing here and broadening more things here.
Great. You just answered 2 or 3 questions again.
Oh.
Sorry?
Okay. Sorry, it's counting down.